Friends. Welcome to today's live where I'm going to be answering the questions that you guys have left for me inside of the community tab. If you are brand new to my channel, hello, my name is Nicole Eaton. I'm a parenting mentor. I'm also a licensed pediatric occupational therapist. And I'm really excited to be here with you guys. These Q&As are a lot of fun. I laugh because to have so many subscribers and people who filter through my videos, I feel like I have the shyest audience. I'll be like Q&A time, and then just a few of you are like, "Yeah, let me ask a question." So, just a reminder, do not be shy, and if you're watching live and you have a question, you can leave it in the comment section and I will jump to your question after I answer the questions that were sent ahead. So, let's dive in, you guys. I am going to put these up on the screen so you can see the questions yourself, although this one was quite long, so you may not see it all. So I'll read it to you. My 3-year-old doesn't have a very good grasp of when someone doesn't want to play or wants to be left alone. How can I teach reading cues during social interactions? What is your recommendation to show my children how to be able to play with others? I'm really concerned she will perceive this behavior as mean and get her feelings hurt. She was born at the beginning of the pandemic and has very limited interaction with other children, but is very interested in others and friendly. Okay, so here's the first thing I'd like to say about this. Shout out to all the pandemic babies because my youngest, Naya, is also a pandemic baby. You guys let me know in the comment section if my internet connection's spotty, it's going to be hardwired, so I don't have this issue, but not until next week. So just let me know if this skips on you. So here's the first thing I want to say about this. What I read, like just the parenting mentor in me, what I read so much is that mama heart. And the way you phrase this question is like, I want to protect my child from experiencing other people's like less thoughtful or less kind reactions to her wanting to play or interact with people. And I so get that as a fellow mom. But listen, our kids, we can't protect them from everything. And the best way for them to learn is to actually go out and experience life. So, how is your child going to learn how to read cues? It's by letting her go play unimpeded and let the kids interact with her as authentically and naturally as possible. And let her experience what it's like for a kid not to be interested in playing with her. And when it's appropriate, you can come in and explain or give context or ask if she'd like to do something different. But the reminder here is that our kids we're not here to protect them from every life circumstance. We're here to be guides and to support them as they need. But so much of the foundation of their learning and their education is from being an active participant in life, right? So let her go experience what it's like to be 3 and to want to play with kids. And then there's opportunities for conscious communication and conscious conversation on the back end. But also, it's quite normal for a 3-year-old to not be able to read social cues. They're 3. you know, there are plenty of adults who don't know how to read social cues. So, trusting in timing and experience and her ability to learn and to adapt. But sending you so much love because I so feel your mama heart there. Okay, so let's dive into the next question that I have here. I really hope you guys are able to hear me because my bar is down to 1. All right, let's see what we got here. This is a very similar question. How to teach boundaries to toddlers? What to do when they want to just play all the time? So now I'm going to my OT hat. And the first thing that like jumps out at me is it's our children's actual job to play. Like that is developmentally what they are here to do because guess what? The more they play, the more they learn. How do they learn about the environment? How do they learn about people? How do they learn about social cues and boundaries and all the rest? Actually through play. Like that is the most functional way to teach your child anything, especially when we're talking about toddlers. they are exploring so much. So, I don't know what specific boundaries you're referring to. But what I maybe intuitively pick up on when you say what to do and they just want to play all the time, maybe the thought of like, we have appointments to get to, or now it's time to transition from just playing to sitting down and having a meal together, right? And in those instances, what I found is having for our kids that have a more difficult time transitioning from one activity or one part of the day to the other is to actually have a schedule, like picture schedule drawn up. So they know the routine and the structure of the day, and you'll have less resistance as you continue to follow that structure, especially with like the 1 to 3 year olds, because they know this is just what we do every single day, right? So again, if it's a transition from playing to mealtime, maybe it's a cleanup song, right? Like we motivate and we get down on the level with them and we're like, okay, we're done. We're all done playing. Or we set a timer. We give them a reminder. Hey, in 2 minutes, we're all done and we're going to clean up, and then including them in the transition to the next activity. So for instance, Naya loves to get the placemats out when it's dinner time. So, hey, Naya, can you help me grab the placemat so we can place them on the table and get ready to eat? All of these things, all of these little like interactivity tasks help with the transition from one thing to the other, which ultimately establishes boundaries, right? But again, remembering that like this is how they learn. Let them play as much as you can, and then implement a little bit of structure and like co support in setting boundaries or expectations. All right, so let's jump into the next question. This one is from my dear friend, Viola. Okay, and I love this question. So she asked, how do you support yourself when you have the desire for creativity and alone time? Manifestor vibes. For those of you who are familiar with human design, her and I are both manifestors, but we have to show up for our family and we're interrupted often. I'm still working on this, she says. And don't I know the feeling? Okay. So here's a couple of things that came up for me to speak into you with this question because I so get it. Being a manifestor, like for those of you who are unfamiliar with human design, manifestors, we're like pretty rare in the population. We make up like 9 or 10% of the human population, and we have inconsistent energy. So we will have like a burst or an urge to go do something, and then we go into like rest cycle of like, everybody leave me alone. I need to recharge and refuel. And so as a mom, when we have this creative burst of this energy that's like, I have this urge to go do something. And then sometimes we find ourselves being met with the fact that like our children need our attention. And you're like, but I have this urge. So here's the things that have come up for me with this is one, I think I was very attached to the idea that a lot of these urges could only be met, especially because the urges would often come in me wanting to do something for my business, right? Like I want to type up this email or I have this idea or vision that I want to bring to life. And oftentimes that urge can seem very much at odds with like breastfeeding the baby or taking kids to soccer, whatever it is. And what I found that is helpful for me is to one, use a voice note. So this would go for anybody, like because us as parents, we often have ideas or even a brilliant idea, and we're in the middle of being present or attempting to be present with our family. And what I find helpful is like, instead of fighting the urge of like, I have this desire, but I'm trying to be present, I can help myself be present by just grabbing my phone or a notepad and making a note of like what that desire or idea is. So I know it's somewhere safe and I can come back to it. And then the second thing I've learned, and this has been like a little more subtle, but something I'm interested in playing with since you brought this question forward is seeing if that creativity, that urge, and that desire, that life force that comes through us, like, I want to do this thing now, can actually be partially satiated through being creative and doing an activity with your family. So if your family needs you and you have this life force energy come up, that's like, I have a desire to paint or I have a desire to write or be on video, whatever it is, How can you do a creative activity with your children to satiate that desire? And I've done a little bit of this with Kai, where we YouTubed how to make like a paper phone, right? I had this desire to film and to create content. And of course, thankfully for me, my channel is so centered around raising children and child development that it's a beautiful natural fit at times. But what I found is that I like had a sense of peace in doing a creative activity with Kai, and knowing that I got to come back and like tell the story how I desire to tell the story and share it with the audience later. But like just capturing that moment allowed me to really be present with him and meet the creative desire. So maybe that's something that you could play with. And then the other thing, just this is for all parents to remember, and it's hard to remember when you're in it, especially because Viola has two kids that are younger than my kids. This is so seasonal. And it's so difficult when we're in the middle of it because we think like this stage is taking so much of me. And of course, we signed up for it and we love it on certain days, but at other points in times, it feels all consuming. It feels exhausting and it feels never ending. And then we have other people at different stages to remind us like, you will actually move through this phase so quickly. And before you know it, your kids are in school, or maybe they're in daycare, or maybe they started an extracurricular activity that just opens up more space. Because I was on the edge of like a meltdown 7 months ago before Naya started daycare. And because I was just at the point of exhaustion, from obviously the past 2 years, everyone having the kids home, and then Naya being a newborn in 2020 and breastfeeding and all of the things. It was like I was so ready for that break. And before she started daycare, it didn't feel like it was ever going to end. It didn't feel like I would ever have more space to create, to follow the desires and the urges that were my own. And now I'm in a different phase of motherhood. Like Kai's in school for the full day, and then he has soccer and he has jujitsu, right? And then Naya's in daycare for most of the day. And so it's just honoring these phases. And even with this one that I'm in, I have to surrender because now it's everyone has activities. Naya hasn't started yet, but suddenly my schedule is filled with things to do, as opposed to having the kids home. And so I'm constantly having to remind myself, this is a chapter of motherhood. Can I surrender a little bit deeper? Can I be present in this phase and in this chapter and trust that as the kids get older, there will be more time, there will be more space to meet more of my needs and my desires? And can I be creative and crafty in the interim to meet my needs while also meeting my family's needs? Because it's so important for us, right? So I hope that is helpful. We have another question here. Let's see. Let me throw this one up. Hi, could you please explain what is hyperactivity in an autistic child and how occupational therapists help in it? Okay, so this particular question, first, I will caveat it by saying I have not worked with many autistic children. And I'm not 100% clear in the question in terms of hyperactivity. Like, what behaviors are you specifically speaking about? Like, you can find hyperactivity in any child. So it's not just specific to autistic children. But what I will say is autistic children may demonstrate stimming behaviors, which is like it could be rocking back and forth. It could be opening and closing a door. It could be any number of things that help to regulate their body. So it's like a repetitive behavior that you might notice. So I'm wondering if that might be confused with hyperactivity. Occupational therapist's job is to help anyone, so children, adults, whatever, be as functional and independent as possible. So a lot of occupational therapists, especially working with autistic children, help with sensory regulation. Like, how can this child feel good within their body so that they can be functional and be independent in the things that they have to do in their day to day, right? How can they complete tasks in their day to day? Well, it first starts with how are they feeling inside of their body? If they feel dysregulated because they're seeking more stimulation or they're overstimulated, well, then their nervous system, they're going to shut down, right? Like it's hard for them to be independent and be functional if they're getting too much sensory stimulation or not enough sensory stimulation. So, working on sensory programs to help children feel good within their bodies so that way they can be receptive to tools, adaptive tools, systems in place to help them be as independent as possible. I hope that's helpful. I don't see any questions in the live feed here. So those were all the questions that I was asked. You guys, a couple of things before we pop off. Um, in the description box below is a link to join my email list. And by doing so, you're entered into a weekly giveaway in which you can pick any of my masterclasses from my website for free. It's such a cool thing that I'm doing. I want more people to have access to the work that I create because I know how powerful and impactful it is. So if that interests you, you can check that out in the description box below. Thank you guys for being here and hanging out with me. I'm excited to do the next one. If you have any questions about anything that came up today, you can drop it in the comment section. Otherwise, I'll catch you in the next video. Thanks again, guys. Bye.